Hello everyone, this is Johnny and welcome back. In today's video I want to do several things, including potting up this lavender that I propagated from cuttings last year. I also want to do some seed starting for various annual and perennial flowers, which mostly for these I'm a little bit late for sowing seeds, but I wanted to go ahead and do that and kind of experiment with that this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I do that process. And then I also want to go through and take some late spring cuttings from various plants in my collection. So follow along with me. Okay, so first of all, here are some angustifolia lavenders that I propagated from cuttings last summer. This is a variety called Victorian Amethyst. It creates nice, beautiful, kind of pinkish purple blossoms. And a few of these are actually starting to put on the flowering heads there, that one and this one here. But I believe if I go ahead and pot these up in these 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch by 6 inch tall square pots, I believe I can grow them out quicker and get a pretty good sized plant to sell next season. And so that's my goal for these, to kind of grow these out to a good mature plant to sell next season. So what I have here is a good potting soil. And it doesn't matter too much what you use, just find a good potting soil with good organic matter in it. I have a Espoma plant tone right here, and then of course my square pots. As I talked about in a recent video, instead of using the trade #1, or as a lot of people call them 1-gallon pots, if you use these square pots, which are probably technically somewhere around ½ gallon if you actually measure the volume, some of them like 2 quarts, some say like 2.3 quarts, but roughly ½ gallon pots here, 5.5 inch, 5.5 inch, 6 inch. It allows you to fit 8 of these in one of these 10-20 trays, and it's a lot more efficient when it comes to space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put soil in these. I'm going to add a little bit of fertilizer and mix that in, and then go ahead and pot these up. Now I did want to mention something. When I do potting, I really love to use this galvanized metal scoop. Now, I mentioned this in a previous video, but this is technically made for feed, for animal feed, but it works really good for potting soil and for filling these pots quickly. I am going to go ahead and put links down below, Amazon affiliate links down below in the video description if you're curious to get your own scoop like this, or even this Espoma plant tone fertilizer that I'm going to be using. And I will put those affiliate links down below. If you click on those links and purchase products from those, Amazon does give me a commission, and that helps support this channel at no extra cost to you. Okay, let's go ahead and pot these up. You can see how efficient the scoop is at getting the soil in there. I mean, you can do this by hand, you can grab another pot and do it, but I found that it's hard to beat these particular scoops. And this even works when you're doing like small trays. It works for that as well, but just a really good quick way to fill these up and get the soil right where you want it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put some plant tone fertilizer there and mix that in. Okay, I got a good amount of fertilizer in there. I'm going to go ahead and kind of mix that into the soil just a bit. You can see I have filled those about, I'd say 3/4 or so. Okay, now that these are 3/4 full, I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these guys. And you may have seen this in one of my past videos, but I found a good way to tag these, and I will link to these products down below. The plant marker itself, the plastic part here, I get on Amazon, and I'll put an affiliate link for that if you want these exact plant label markers. And then these laser printer labels, which are waterproof, I got through another site, and I can link to that down below. But it works really well. You can print these off with a laser printer, stick them to these plant labels, and then you have a nice clean, and it should be long-lasting plant tag to mark your plants. But I'm just going to simply take one of these. I love these kind of these thin plastic pots because it allows you to get that out quickly. And you can see there, we actually have a good amount of root development. So this is good. You can see all those roots there on the side. So I think this is a good time to go ahead and pot this one up. So just kind of stick that in there. I mean, maybe make a little bit of a divot in the middle. There we go. And then fill that in with soil around. Okay, so as you can see, I have all 16 of these potted up. It's important that immediately after you pot up plants, and especially if you put fertilizer in with the soil, that you water these in really well. And so I'm going to water these in really well, let that soil kind of work down, make sure there's no air bubbles around the roots, and get that fertilizer kind of starting to dissolve into that soil. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to move over to seed starting. Okay, so I have a number of trays full of little pots here, starting with these little 3.5-inch pots, 18 for each one of these 10-20 trays. And I believe this will be a good start. If I need any more, I can fill more. I also have a tray here full of 6-packs, kind of the larger 6-packs there. And then I have some of these larger plug trays as well. Looks like these are 38 plugs per 10-20 tray. Now when it comes to the soil I'm going to use, I'm just going to use regular potting soil today. If I were starting indoors, it would be important that I used a more sterile soil, something like peat moss and perlite mix. But since I'm starting these outdoors, once again, I'm a little late on this. Ordinarily, you'd want to probably start these a little bit early indoors or in a greenhouse before your last frost, and then put them out after your last frost. But I'm going to go ahead and do these outdoors, so I'm just going to straight up start with potting soil to begin with. Okay, I have a stack here of flower seeds that I want to start. A lot of these are perennials, but some are annuals. Yarrow, zinnia, calendula, etc. Now, next year I'm going to start these seeds a lot earlier. When I do flower seeds, I'm going to start them sometime in mid-March to late March, sometime like that. About the same time that you would start your tomato or pepper seeds indoors is probably a good time to grow a lot of these indoors and get them kind of ready, and then you can put them out after the after your last frost date. But I'm late this year, but I'm going ahead and try this. Some of these may not actually bloom this year, some of these perennial flowers, and some of the annuals will later on in the season. But I'm going to go ahead and give this a go because, you know, I'm kind of learning the process here of running a very small plant nursery. And some of that is learning what sells when, and of course trees, fruiting trees and other trees and bushes and stuff like that, that sells best early on in the year because that's the best time to get that in the ground. And then maybe in the fall, there'll be a little bit of a resurgence as things cool down again. That's another good time to put those kind of things in the ground. But with your flowers, those are really big sellers in the middle of the summer. And so I'm a little late, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do, it's of course important that you label your seeds when you start them. I've showed you this in a previous video, but I have these sheets that I printed out using a laser printer on these waterproof labels, and I'm going to affix those to these plastic plant markers that I got on Amazon. Once again, I will link these down below. But I have my tray here filled with soil. I'm just going to make a divot in the middle of each one, put some seeds in, and then mark each row or an entire tray if I do an entire tray with each seed variety. It's important, just look on the back of the packet and it'll tell you basically what to do. But in general, you don't need to plant these seeds very deep, and then you just put a little bit of dusting of soil on the top. I'm going to be growing these outdoors, so I'll make sure and put them in a good warm spot, but one that doesn't maybe get the harshest of the late afternoon hot sun. Okay, this first variety is a Yarrow Love Parade that I'm going to be growing. And then I actually have 2 packets of that. I have a Colorado blend Yarrow. Nice, beautiful one there. And then I have a common Yarrow. So let me go ahead and start with those, and then we'll go on to the next one. And these seeds are very tiny, so I need to be careful here. Just get a little bit out there. I may use tweezers in the future, but I'm just going to put one just lightly there, not too deep in each thing. Okay, I actually started this older pack, which is from Uprising Seeds, and they call it Love Parade. It says it has dense clusters of blushed pink blooms with pale yellow stamens. So that's going to be beautiful there. The Baker Creek also has that variety, and I bought that this year. And you can kind of see the color there. Almost looks like more purple in that picture there. So that's going to be stunning there. And I have 18 of these here. I'll water these in at the very end. And often what I'll do with these seeds is I'll mist it. I'll use a mister to not really disturb where the seed went, and maybe just mist it really well. And then until they really sprout up, that may be how I water it for a bit. Okay, now I have a Colorado blend of yarrow that I want to start, and I'm going to do a full tray of these as well because I really love the beautiful colors of that. And yarrow is great for pollinators as well. I'm trying to mostly put one seed in each hole, but with seeds that are really small, several of those there I just noticed got 2 seeds, but it's not a big deal. You can thin out the ones that aren't as strong as they sprout up. Hopefully we'll have good germination, but growing from seed can feel tedious, but it's very rewarding to see them grow up. If you're planning on doing a little nursery of some kind, whether that be a backyard nursery or just a small operation of some kind, or even a large operation, growing from seed is going to be a good way, if you have patience and the time for it, to really make high margins on your plants, because you don't have a lot of money in a tray of soil with some seed. It's not very expensive, and you can sell them for a good markup later on. And so that's something I'm trying this season. Once again, a little late, but trying to grow some plants from seed that I can sell. Can I dust the soil over that? Okay, the final yarrow variety that I'm going to be starting today is a common white yarrow, and I'll go through that same process. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and brush that over. Get those planted in there. It's amazing how many seeds are in each one of these packets for these smaller seeds. It says minimum 800 seeds for this. And most of these have 1 or 2 seeds in them. There might be a few that had 3 seeds. I've tried to do my best there. But I mean, this one packet of seeds can grow a lot of plants. So once again, very high margin for a nursery business to start your own seeds. Okay, I have still quite a few left, and I'm not going to take you through every single one, but I just want to briefly show you what I'm going to do. I have a Salvia Swan Lake, Salvia Lady in Red. I have a Salvia Violet Queen. I also have True Hyssop, which I'm excited about. I have an Anise Hyssop. I have Zeolites Calendula. I'm excited to grow that. Resina Calendula. Creamy Yellow Giant Zinnias. So this is actually an older seed packet that we've had around. It said actually packed for 2015. So as seeds get older, your germination rate will likely go down. So I may not have as much success from these older seed packets, but it's worth a shot. I'm excited to see what those look like if I can get those to germinate. Moulin Rouge Zinnias. Polar Bear Zinnia. Sweet Alyssum, and this is an Oriental Nights variety. I have an Echinacea, a purple Echinacea. Cactus Flower Dahlia. Trailing Soapwort. And Jupiter's Beard, which is also called Red Valerian quite often. And so I have that one as well. Okay, so I've planted out those seeds. Now I'm going to go ahead and just gently water these in. I'm going to go ahead and use a hose this time, but in the future I might do more misting to kind of maintain this. But for this first soak, I want to go ahead and use the hose. Okay, now I'm going to show you where I'm going to put these right now while they germinate and grow up when they're real young. So I have this bench here where I grow Japanese maples. It does have a nice shade cloth above it. You can see there that I have, let's see, 6 trays of the seeds I just started here. And then I have a bench across here that I built. And so there are the lavenders that I potted up. Some elderberries. I didn't show you those today, but I have some elderberries there. And then the other remaining 3 trays here, and these are the yarrows. They're getting more direct sun. However, this part of my yard gets morning sun, kind of morning, early afternoon sun, but it doesn't get late afternoon sun when it's really hot. So I believe this will be fine. I will keep these moist and watered. So for the ones here that are in more direct sun, I'm gonna have to check those more often, but just make sure they stay moist, and hopefully, because it's warm now, we should get some germination pretty quickly, and hopefully I'll have some plants to sell. Depending on what sells really well this year, I'll probably grow larger amounts of that next year and try to not to be late instead of late like I am now. Here are Japanese maples, the seeds that sprouted this year. Some of those I dug up from my yard, and some of those I started in a tray, and I showed you that process. I'm really happy with how well the ones are doing in these little 2.5-inch pots. They actually look like, in some cases, they're growing faster than some of the other ones, which is definitely interesting, but a good variety of colors there. It's unique how you can have a leaf shape like that from the same batch of seeds as like some of these others. It's pretty cool. Growing from seeds, a lot of fun. Okay, next I'm going to take some cuttings and try to root them from this lavender plant. This lavender plant is a chance seedling that some of the seeds fell from some lavender plants that we had here in pots, and it's just established itself. It's a beautiful Stoicus variety, and you can see the style there. It's beautiful, and there is a lot of growth down here that doesn't have flowers that would be perfect for going ahead and rooting those. So we'll take those and I'll show you exactly what I'm looking for. And then when it comes to the rooting medium, I like to put those in a 50% perlite, 50% peat mix, and I'm going to do it here in this tray and keep that covered and moist, and that should root in just a few months. Before I start taking cuttings, I'm going to sanitize my pruners with some isopropyl alcohol. Okay, what you're looking for is nice new growth like this that doesn't have any flowers on it. And you're going to go ahead and trim off that little bit. And you'll want to put this new part with a lot of these nodes here into the medium. And I'll show you that. So I'm going to take a number of cuttings like this, new growth that doesn't have flowers on it. Okay, as you can see here, I have quite a few cuttings from that lavender plant that I've taken. I just need to clean these up just a bit before I actually stick these into a rooting hormone and stick these into the medium. So what you're looking at is you have one of these cuttings like this, and you can see all these different leaf nodes here at the bottom. And you want to go ahead and trim off all these lower leaves and stick this down into the soil, you know, probably at least halfway there, and nearly as deep as this tray is, and the roots are going to come out where those nodes are. So you can see I'm going through and cleaning these up. I'm going to switch to doing a lot of this by hand here in a second once I get the big woody parts off, and then I can strip off the lower leaves by hand once I get these to a good spot. I don't want that one to be so long. Okay, now that I have my holes there and I have my lavender cleaned up, when it comes to lavender cuttings, they root pretty well, and so rooting hormone is optional, but I'm going to go ahead and use it in this particular case to increase my level of success. I've had really good results with this Midas Hydro rooting compound. It's a gel. I do like to protect my hands with gloves to make sure I don't get it on my fingers, but this has worked really well for me, and this is available on Amazon, and I'll put affiliate links down below for that. I've used powders in the past, but I much prefer the gel. Okay, so I have those all placed. Now I'm going to just go ahead and kind of tuck these in, make sure the soil is around that. And I will keep this nice and misted, and I will keep it covered with a little plastic tote bin. And I'll show you that at the end where I put these. And I will water this in really good to begin with shortly, but I'd like that rooting hormone to kind of soak into the cutting itself before I do that. Just kind of get these tucked in. For routine maintenance, you need to keep this misted several times a day. Keeping it covered does help, but you need to make sure that it gets good and bright light. I will use either a mist or something like this, or a larger one, since I plan to have more plants this year to propagate. But these are going to be good to go ahead and mist this and keep this wet. I'll go ahead and give this a good misting right now. And then I'm going to be covering it with this particular bin like that. This does have two big holes on the front to make sure that it doesn't get too stale in there, but it does keep in a lot of humidity. And this won't be necessary as long with some cuttings for lavender, but just during the beginning, keep these humid, keep them moist, and keep some light on these, and should have pretty good success. Lavender roots pretty easily. Okay, so last year I had good success rooting this evergreen clematis. And I took cuttings 2 different ways. No matter what you do, you want to have one of these nodes under soil because that's where the roots are going to come out. So you could trim this here, here, and cut off that leaf and let this stick out, trim it back down to 1 leaf and cut the leaf in half, something like that. And it will root out here, and then eventually you'll get new shoots come out. That's one way to do it. Another way, if you want a taller plant from the beginning, is you cut it here, and then you let a lower node stick out and let it have maybe 2 leaves, and then trim it off here. So the bottom node will root, and it'll give you a top node to have new growth out. So you have maybe a faster, quicker plant. I'm going to do most of them that way because it does allow you to have a few less cuttings, but I think I'm going to have faster sellable plants that way. So both will work. I had really good success rate with these, and it has beautiful white fragrant flowers, and do like this particular one. It doesn't have any flowers right now. I may give it some flowering fertilizer to encourage some flowers, but it did have flowers earlier on this year. Okay, as you can see, I have quite a few cuttings here, and as I explained, I'm just going to trim these up. Mostly, I want to do it such that 1 node's under, 1 node's above the soil, and maybe 2 leaves cut in half on each one. That way I can get new growth here and roots down below and new shoots. So let me show you like an example here. Let's take this one, trim it right there above that node. Go ahead and trim off that leaf, and then cut this leaf in half. Same thing here. That leaf, cut the leaf in half. And then when I cut this at an angle, somewhere below the node, like that, and there's my cutting. The roots will come out here. That'll go in the soil, and then I have new growth that should come up here eventually. And so I'm going to make them all like that, except for maybe a few where, not to waste it, if I only have 1 little node left, you can also do it the way where instead of doing it like this, like I explained, I could take something like this, for instance, and I could instead put that in the ground right there. So I still have a node that would go down in the soil medium. I have a leaf up top, and this will take a lot longer though. This will probably take like 2 seasons to make a plant that you can sell, because this will put out roots here, and then eventually those roots will put out some new shoots. You might get a couple new shoots here. So that's not going to be the best way. You can get those to root, but this is going to give you a faster plant. Okay, I have a clear plastic container. On the top, I have 3 holes drilled, a little bit over 1 inch hole, maybe 1 1/4 inches. I'm not sure what that is there, I don't remember, but I did 3 holes there. The bottom of this container has a bunch of holes, if you can see that there, so it drains well. And then in it, 50% perlite, 50% peat. So 50% peat, 50% perlite, and that worked really well for these last year. It keeps it nice and humid without being too stuffy. And then I keep this in an area that gets some light, but not direct sunlight to bake these, and I keep these misted. And so I'm just gonna dip each one of those in rooting hormone and get these in here. When you take your cuttings, if you don't stick them in right away, you need to stick them in a cup of water, but since I am pretty much processing these right away, that was not necessary. I will need to keep this misted several times a day and keep this in a spot where it gets some light, but it doesn't get direct sun to bake it. That's important. You want to give this some light to keep it alive, but not too much hot sun that just dries these out. And keeping it in a box like this that has some breathing, but keeps it pretty humid, worked really well for me last year. I also took Wisteria, Forsythia, and Azalea cuttings as well and followed those same basic steps. And I do plan to show some of that footage in the future when I put together some results videos. Well, I hope you enjoyed following along with me as I potted up the lavender cuttings, started seeds, and did some various cuttings. And if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, consider subscribing if you'd like to find out how those did, if I was able to have good success with those cuttings and how the seedlings are doing, etc. And then in the next few weeks, over the next few weeks and really over the next month, I'm going to be doing quite a few more cuttings, including a lot of Japanese maple cuttings and Japanese maple grafting. And then I'm also, at the end of this year, I hope to do kind of some wrap-up videos where I combine a lot of footage into one video as kind of like a tutorial of how to propagate these various plants in these various ways. And so I definitely recommend, once again, if you're not yet subscribed, to subscribe so you can follow along with this journey. Well, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.